Well, that's another Olympic Games come and gone. Like many people, I delighted in watching some of the amazing work that the athletes at the Winter Games did. And, as it frequently does, the Olympics coming up reminds me of a very frequent question. Could Poi or Flow Arts ever be in the Olympics? There are a lot, and I do mean a lot of opinions, both pro and con, when it comes to whether the Flow Arts and the Olympics are a good match. I've actually covered some of the questions around it before, but this time around something has changed for me. In this video, I'm going to explore some of the arguments for and against the inclusion of Flow Arts in the Olympics, as well as share why I think that, unfortunately, now it may no longer be up to us at all. Drex here from DrexFactor Poi, sharing with you the love of poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And in this video, we're going to talk about sports, competition, the Olympics, and how poi fits into all of them. But before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Fire Mecca, Flow Fests, Flow Toys, Pyroterra Light Toys, and Ultra Poi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all of these awesome companies and the work they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links down in the description of this video. First up, it is worth asking why this question comes up in the first place. Since the mid-2000s, poi has often been framed as something either in or akin to the action sport mold, with comparisons frequently being drawn to skateboarding or snowboarding. And given that both sports are now firmly lodged into the Olympics canon, it does kind of beg the question, why not poi? Are our tricks any less worthy of respect or prestige compared to these board sports? Once upon a time, they both seemed like long shots for inclusion in the Olympics, so if they can do it, why can't we? The moment this question gets asked, of course, it tends to swirl up a lot of controversy. But why? For people who are in favor of the inclusion of poi or another flow art in the Olympics, the arguments tend to go something like this. Inclusion in the Olympic Games would legitimize poi and flow arts in the eyes of many. Rather than being a niche hobby regarded with skepticism, if not outright hostility, by mainstream culture, being in the Olympics would be something of a benediction, saying that what we do is no less worthy of respect than snowboarding or figure skating. In addition, the inclusion of poi on such a visible stage would also create more opportunities for the people who practice it. Sponsorships, endorsements, and the like would likely follow, and that would make it more economically feasible for people to engage in flow arts full-time. Finally, having competitions with real stakes would not just push the level of the art form further by incentivizing techniques that help win competitions, it would also be a powerful force to attract athletes that might get funneled into other sports. These are inventive minds that could bring new ideas to the table that we all could benefit from. Sounds great, right? Well, not so fast. There are equally loud voices that say that it's a terrible idea, and the case they make sounds more like this. First up, flow arts are an art, and by definition subjective. How exactly could one judge the merits of a specific artist's work as compared to another? This is not only not possible, but also something we shouldn't try in the first place. And the reason for that is the second argument against, namely that introducing any form of judging the merits of different people's work brings with it the risk of elitism and people driven by ego rather than by their love of the art. Finally, competition kills communities by pitting people, well, in competition with each other. It's less collaborative and builds rivalries instead of friendships. This would damage the open source communal spirit of the flow arts and turn it into the very thing that many people came here to escape. Now, you can agree or disagree with any of these contentions. I certainly have my own opinions on the matter, because personally, I think the egos are already here in the flow arts, whether competitions exist or not, and that some of the kindest acts of compassion I've ever seen have been between competitors in the Olympics. Lots of people find friendly competition to be fertile ground for building friendships, and that's long been the case, both within the flow arts and outside of it, although I do understand how past bad experiences can color somebody's opinion of competitive environments. As for scoring, I mean, the God's honest truth is that this really isn't that big a deal to develop. Art, dance, and martial arts have all had scored competitions that have been around for decades. If you want to get an idea of how it could possibly work for us, go look up the scoring systems for any of them. I might actually have one such example in mind, but we'll get there. There's also something of a tangent argument that flow arts are already in the Olympics in the form of rhythmic gymnastics. They use clubs and hoops, after all, so isn't that close enough? This one, I have to confess, I also find a little less than compelling. The movement vocabulary is radically different in rhythmic gymnastics, with far more emphasis on the gymnastics part than the rhythm one. For another, I've never heard of a rhythmic gymnast who refers to themselves as a flow artist. Basically, until we get a rhythmic gymnast to attend or teach at a fire or flow festival, I'm going to call this one dubious at best. Now, you may disagree with me in these assessments, and that's totally fine. To be honest, this is not the hill that I care to die on. But for those out there who are true believers, there is the question of how exactly it would be possible. So let's outline the process by which any sport gets into the Olympics and how it could work for flow arts. All Olympic sports start as independent sports that are formalized under a governing body that creates a scoring rubric as well as administers their own competition structures. First, a scoring rubric is formulated and used in competition. This tends to be kind of a moving target, with most sports changing their rubric over time to either encourage greater virtuosity among competitors or reduce risk likelihood. Some may give more or less weight to artistic elements over time and or declare certain practices illegal if they prove to have too high a risk of serious injury. Competition circuits are created, with local competitions resulting in qualifiers headed to regional, national, and international competitions. Specifically, to qualify for the Olympics, a sport must have competitions in at least 75 countries spread out over at least 4 continents. The governing body of the sport must be recognized by the International Olympic Committee and then voted by said committee to be included in the Olympic Games, which, though challenging, is ultimately doable. The idea of an international governing body to judge flow arts competitions may turn the stomach of some, but it's something that is absolutely possible. And I know that because breakdancing wound up in the Olympics. Breakdancing. There is literally no challenge that the flow arts face as a barrier to becoming an Olympic sport that breakdancing did not, and it still made it to the Paris Summer Games. But it's also because of how breakdancing fared at the Paris Games that I think, regardless of what efforts we undertake to get Poi included in the Olympics, are ultimately doomed. Let me explain why. Leading up to the 2024 Summer Olympics, I was kind of surprised to find out that breakdancing had gotten added to the Games. I didn't even know that there were international breakdancing competitions, and I started looking them up to get a feel for what was in store. And I was pleasantly surprised. The competition format was head-to-head, something I'd also seen done at flow arts competitions both here in the US as well as in Russia. Competitors were graded on their technique, vocabulary of moves, musicality, originality, and how cleanly they executed their moves. And I can really easily see how you could apply a really similar rubric to Poi and other flow arts. We could more or less lift that rubric directly and apply it to what we do. In addition, breakdancing has a really close relationship with music, and the competitions are scored by DJs, with the competitors discovering in the moment what they'll be dancing to. Which, again, that sounds a lot like flow. So I was really excited to see how breakdancing would go at the Olympics, and by now, if you have any familiarity with how this went down at the Olympics, you're thinking about a breakdancer named Raygun. I actually tuned in for the entirety of the women's competition to get a feel from start to finish as to how it would go, and I was really impressed. The finals between Amy and Nika were beyond thrilling, and Amy in particular really floored me with how cool and focused a competitor she was. This was badass. And then I looked at the chatter online, and I was shocked to discover that nobody was talking about that awesome final. Everyone was talking about Raygun, somebody who'd gotten knocked out of the competition nearly an hour beforehand. Whether or not you think that Raygun deserved to be at the Olympics or not, one thing is beyond debate, and that is that the fallout from Raygun's appearance at the Olympics overshadowed all the other competitors and awards. Most people familiar with the Olympics can name Raygun, but they can't name the woman who actually did win gold in breakdancing. That was Amy, by the way. She's awesome, and you should totally look her up. And when I realized that Raygun was being relentlessly mocked and held up as everything wrong with the sport by Olympic purists and breakdancing purists alike, I also realized this. Raygun also represents a case study on what would happen if flow arts ever made it to the Olympics. The Olympic purists would bristle at us scrappy hippies staining the dignity of the games, and the flow arts purists would scream bloody murder at how Olympic competition represented selling out. All it would take is one competitor like Raygun who could be held up as a scapegoat for everyone to throw up their hands and agree. This was a terrible idea. Regardless of how or if we organize ourselves into a sport that could be recognized by the International Olympic Committee, I think that breakdancing's inauspicious debut there makes that possibility really unlikely. The Olympics took a pretty big risk by including breakdancing and got burned for it. I think they're a lot less likely to take a big risk like that again. All that said, just because I think the odds of us getting into the Olympics are now nil, and the reason for that has nothing at all to do with us, I also don't think that that means that entertaining the idea of creating competitions or a governing body to judge them is likewise dead on arrival. But I do think there's a lot of inertia, if not outright resistance to the idea. An anti-competitive and radically individualistic ethos is certainly common among flow artists that came into the community in the 2000s and the 2010s, but that doesn't necessarily mean that'll always be the case. None of the competitors for breakdancing in the 2024 games were from the generation that pioneered breakdancing as an underground art in the 1970s or 1980s. From what I gather, there's been a major generational shift that's led to the competitions that made its inclusion in the Olympics possible. Maybe a shift like that will be possible for flow arts too. Unfortunately, for the time being, I think I have to say that I don't really have hopes of seeing poi or flow arts in the Olympics. Maybe competitions will happen, but I'm skeptical that the Olympics will ever be in our grasp. Sure, some flow artists may wind up performing in the opening ceremonies, but none of those artists will ever achieve the renown of somebody like Michael Phelps or Simone Biles for doing so. And you may be in the camp that hears all that and says, fabulous, as it should be. And if that's the case, then I'm genuinely glad that you're happy. But I do think that the rest of us have missed out on what could have been some truly special experiences in the process. But what do you think? Should poi or any other flow arts ever be organized into competitive events? Or should I say more so than the few examples that we already have? How would you go about doing it, and what sports scoring system do you see as a good template? Or do you think it's a terrible idea and doomed to failure? Either way, leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. Also be sure to like, share, and subscribe so other people can find this video and join the conversation. Video essays like this take a lot of work. From research and writing to shooting and editing, videos like this one would not be possible without my amazing supporters on Patreon. In particular, I'd love to give a shout out to my Flow patrons who are listed on screen right now. Thank you all so much for your very generous support. If you dug this video and you'd like to support the creation of more like it, you can join those Flow patrons in making it possible by signing up for my Patreon over at patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi. I'll leave a link down in the description as well as up in the cards. There you can get access to a whole host of awesome rewards, but more than that, you'll be supporting me in my mission of bringing poi spinning and flow arts to the whole wide world. Thank you in advance. Curious what the 3 biggest obstacles poi has to overcome to be included in... Curious what the 3 biggest obstacles poi has to overcome to be included in the Olympics are? I did another video on that topic that I'll go ahead and link to down in the description as well as up here on screen if you want to check it out. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to get out and flow yourself today. I'll see you with a new video real soon. Take care now. Peace.